If you aren't already, you should be listening to I'm Dying to Tell You. It's a podcast about inspiration, full of compelling interviews with people who have faced incredible challenges, including many people from the ALS community. However, one of the most incredible things about the show is the story of the podcast itself. It's hosted by Lorri Carrey, who's been living with ALS since 2004. Lorri brings her own experience dealing with a debilitating terminal illness to every interview on her show. Today, she joins us to tell us about her own ALS story, how her podcast got started, and what she's learned from talking to so many deeply inspiring people.
Before diagnosis day, I was working full-time as an account manager for Conagra Foods. So I was selling Chef Boyardee products and to Kroger. And I was traveling a lot. I was raising two boys who were in middle school at the time, and married, of course, to my husband, Paul. And, just like living a normal life in the suburb here of Cincinnati. And I was in a really bad car accident in December of 2003. And I was like clipped by a semi and ended up on the other side of the highway. And so I thought, you know what, I should just go to the doctor and get checked out. And when I was there, I was like, I keep meaning to ask you about, I have these twitches in my legs, arms. I have these really bad cramps that are waking me up in the middle of the night. And I also having a really hard time opening up water bottles. And I was fine from the accident, but she said, you definitely have something that is not right. And she noticed the muscle loss in my hand. And she said, you're only 37, and to lose muscle loss indicates that something isn't right. So anyway, after a series of doctor's appointments and being referred from one to the other, I ended up at the neurologist's office on Friday the 13th. February 2004, and that was my first diagnosis day. And everything, changed from that day forward. I remember walking out of the building, and I thought everything would look differently. I was just 37 and told I had 2 to 5 years to live. But I noticed that people were walking by, walking their dog, and I realized in that instant that nothing was going to change, that the world was going to keep moving on. And it was really in that moment, right away, I was like, I'm going to have to keep living my life like I normally would to get through.
Despite her initial prognosis, Lorri found she was, in a way, extremely lucky. Her ALS turned out to be slow progressing. After living with the disease for more than a decade and a half, she decided she wanted to find a way to share her story with the world.
So I had been living with ALS for 15 years when I had the idea of doing the podcast. And every year that I was hitting a milestone of living with ALS after the 2 to 5 years, to me, I look at it like a celebration, a gift that I have extra time. And so I wanted to do something to share inspiration because so many people have inspired me and motivated me to keep living despite ALS. And yeah, so I had thought of the podcast and just started teaching myself how to do it, how to edit, and started it almost 2 years ago.
In the 2 years that she's worked on I'm Dying to Tell You, Lorri's published dozens of interviews, conversations both with people in the ALS community and others with stories that move and inspire her.
Yeah. So I wanted to share anyone or anything that has lifted me up in some way. And yeah, a lot of those people are living with ALS. That's the circle that I run with. And for some reason, they are so inspiring and have so many layers to them that I wanted to share that. And then I also wanted to share people that aren't in our community that have inspired me. And I also didn't want it to be an ALS podcast because I wanted to bring people in to our world, people that don't even know about ALS. And I wanted them to be able to be inspired and to learn about ALS along the way. So, like I talked to Kyle Carpenter, who is the youngest Medal of Honor recipient, who literally covered a grenade for his friend in Afghanistan and has had a 3-year recovery and has sat down to write a book, You Are Worth It. And he is so inspiring and has a lot of wisdom to share. Kanya Sesser, who was born with no legs and left on the side of the road, is amazing. And these are people that I have come across in social media and I follow them. And when I see something come across, it's just always, always uplifting. I think that living with ALS for 17 years and kind of seeing what comes with it and things that go through my mind and my heart living with a fatal disease, I mean, it does allow me to connect with those that are going through a struggle maybe a little bit better. I am definitely not in the same physical space that a lot of my guests are because I am slow progressing. But I don't know. I think I can. I just have some of the same thoughts and curiosities about the way they live life and how they get through a challenging time. And everyone has a struggle, no matter what it is. And I think we're all searching for that in some way, just about every day.
Lorri says she's been moved by the stories of so many of her guests, and she hopes that that inspiration can be passed on to her listeners, especially those who are going through their own struggles.
Yeah, I hope they're taken away that they are not alone, that if they're physically alone, they're not alone in even a virtual community sense, that there is always someone else going through a similar struggle. At the end of every podcast, I say, you are loved and not alone. And I think that is so important. This life on earth is really hard. And I feel like knowing that there are people that care and with you is so important. I hope that they have a bad day and come back and like Smiling Paul, my first guest ever. If you're having a bad day, the next day is a new day, and to not give up, to push forward. And it might not be easy, but we have to do that. And the other thing is that no matter what your story is, it's important, and your voice matters. And if you notice, I've talked to several people that can't talk, and they're using speech generating devices on the podcast because their voice matters. And everyone has a story, and your story encourages someone, and that's valuable.
Even long before her show began, though, Lorri was also an important member of the ALS TDI community.
I can't even remember when I got involved with ALS TDI. It's been so long, but I have been a participant in the precision medicine program for a while, and I was fortunate enough to come visit the old lab, and that was a great experience, and I've always supported all the work that's being done there. You can just really tell that people care, and I respect everyone that is a part of that lab and the work that's being done. And yeah, our family has done a lot of fundraising and created a lot of awareness over the years. My sons, we've raised over $1 million for different organizations, and ALS TDI being one of them. And we'll continue to do that.
If you'd like to hear some of Lorri's excellent interviews yourself, you can subscribe to her show on most major podcast services. Over the past 2 years, she's recorded a long list of episodes, and there's plenty more on the horizon.
Well, I think at this point, I will continue to share whoever I come across that touches my heart and encourages me to keep living life to the fullest. I know I'm going to be talking to Lori Hermstead, who has lost not one, but 2 daughters to ALS, Alex and JC, at 17 and 25 years old. And she remains in this fight with us and is trying to help other moms who are in her situation. And I mean, there's nothing worse than losing a child at a young age. And again, not 1, but 2. And so her story is unique, and her attitude and her faith is inspiring. And then, there's on the lighter side, I'm going to be talking, I'm hoping, I'm trying to get Cheryl and Mike Smith I mean, they said they're going to do it. I just can't pin them down. But now I'm running against the time frame. But on the lighter side, I'm going to be talking about ALS for ALS. And we are excited to be a part of this amazing program where we are brewing a special beer and having a release party and giving back to ALS TDI, where selling beer, brewing beer has raised, I think, over $3 million for research. And then continue to talk to people that are not specifically in the ALS fight, but have something really good to share. For anyone that wants to check out the podcast, you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Google, it's pretty much everywhere, at I'm Dying to Tell You podcast. And if you want to follow on social media, it's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all at I'm Dying to Tell You podcast as well.
For more information about the I'm Dying to Tell You podcast, visit imdyingtotellyou.podcast.com. To learn more about the ALS Therapy Development Institute and our research to end ALS, go to als.net. Thanks for listening.